Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Spooky shows today on this Sunday. An episode of Inner-sanctum-mysteries, The Blood of Cain, starring Mercedes McCambridge, from 77 years ago, January 29th, 1946. And we thank you for tuning in on this Sunday, 29th day of January, 336 days remaining until we get to 2024. President Andrew Jackson ordered the first use of federal soldiers to suppress a labor dispute in 1834. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe, published in the New York Evening Mirror. Happy birthday, Kansas! You were admitted as the 34th State of the Union on this date in 1861. Carl Benz patented the first successful gasoline-driven automobile in 1886. Paris first bombed by German Zeppelins in World War I. Yes, 1916. The USS Missouri, the last battleship commissioned by the U.S. Navy, launched in 1944. Now, Sweden outlawed aerosol sprays in 1978 due to their harmful effect on the ozone layer, becoming the first nation to do that. 6 U.S. diplomats rescued from Tehran on this date in 1980 who took refuge in the Canadian embassy several months earlier.
The United States can confirm that 6 American embassy employees who were not captured at the time of the embassy takeover have come out of Tehran. They had been in the Canadian embassy.
Now, it was on this date in 1984 Ronald Reagan said he would seek another term.
We have made a new beginning. Vice President Bush and I would like to have your continued support and cooperation in completing what we began 3 years ago. I am, therefore, announcing that I am a candidate and will seek re-election to the office I presently hold.
And it was on this date in 1991, President George Herbert Walker Bush praised the troops in the Gulf War.
There is no one more devoted, more committed to the hard work of freedom than every soldier and sailor, every Marine, Airman, and Coast Guardsman, every man and woman now serving in the Persian Gulf.
President George Herbert Walker Bush on this date in 1991. 1998, Birmingham, Alabama, a bomb exploded at an abortion clinic, killing one, severely wounding another. Serial bomber Eric Robert Rudolph suspected as the culprit. In 2002, in his State of the Union address, President George W. Bush described regimes that sponsor terror as an axis of evil, in which he included Iraq, Iran, and North Korea. 2006, ABC correspondent Bob Woodruff and Canadian cameraman Doug Vaught seriously injured in an explosion from an improvised explosive device near Taji, Iraq, about 12 miles north of Baghdad.
This is a 4-man team, a very experienced team. 2 of them were seriously injured in the attack, which occurred up in the Taji area. I gather that Bob has been medevaced out for treatment of his injuries, as well as Doug Vogt, and our thoughts and prayers go with them. Obviously, this continues to be a very dangerous place to work. Big gunshots behind me right now, even if you're very experienced.
Woodruff would return to ABC about a year later. And in 2009, Governor of Illinois Rod Blagojevich removed from office following his conviction of several corruption charges, including the alleged solicitation of personal benefit in exchange for an appointment to the U.S. Senate as a replacement for then U.S. President Barack Obama. Passing away on this date in history, journalist H.L. Mencken, poet Robert Frost, actor Alan Ladd, we know him from Box 13 on the radio. Actor-comedian Freddie Prinze, a delightful entertainer. and his son continues making people very happy on this date. Also, Jimmy Durante, Leif Erikson, Lily St. Cyr. I guess Leif Erikson on radio, probably best known in the first season of My Friend Irma as Jane Stacy's boyfriend. Also, dancer Lily St. Cyr, singer Margaret Truman, Rod McEwen, James Ingram, and Dr. Johnny Fever, and from Head of the Class, Howard Hessman, who passed away last year. Born on this date in history, William Claude Dukenfeld, W.C. Fields.
Whom have I the honor of addressing, milady?
They call me Flower Bell.
Flower Bell, what a euphonious appellation. Easy on the ears and a banquet for the eyes.
Kind of cute yourself.
Thank you. I never argue with a lady.
Smart boy.
Thank you again.
There with Mae West, W.C. Fields, born on this date in history. Also born on this date in history, patriot Thomas Paine, writer Anton Chekhov, entrepreneur John D. Rockefeller, also scientist, inventor Alan B. Dumont, also responsible for a lot of early television. Actor Victor Mature, actor John Forsythe, actor Anthony George, writer Patty Chayefsky, Fifth Dimension's Ron Townsend, and model Gina Karangi. From The Graduate, Catherine Ross turns 83 today. French singer, dancer, and convicted murderer Claudine Longet. Well, I don't think they said misdemeanor negligent homicide in connection with the death of her boyfriend, former Olympic skier Spider Savage, way back when. Claudine Longet, 81 years old today. Tom Selleck is 78. From Beastmaster and V, Mark Singer is 75. Cancer survivor Ann Jillian, best remembered for her role in It's a Living. Jillian is 73 today. Oprah Winfrey, 69. Jack Devereaux on Days of Our Lives, Matthew Ashford, 63. From NYPD Blue, Nicholas Turturro is 61. Pro wrestler Bob Holly, Hardcore Holly, I guess is how he was referred to for a long time, 60 years old. From Saving Private Ryan and Mob City, Edward Burns, 55. From Drugstore Cowboy and Boogie Nights, Heather Graham is 53. From Roseanne and Now the Talk, Sarah Gilbert is 48. From This Is Us, Justin Hartley is 46. And singer Adam Lambert is 41. Those some of the people celebrating the 29th day of January as their birthday. If this is your birthday...
Hi, we're the Four Freshmen, and we just want to say... Happy birthday to you!
And from 77 years ago, January 29th, 1946, Inner-Sanctum-Mysteries, Mercedes McCambridge stars in The Blood of Cain. That's up next on this Sunday Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station. Classic Radio Theater family, you know our friend Mike Lindell has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of your life. He didn't stop by just creating the best pillow. He created the best bed sheets ever. They look and feel great, which means an even better night's sleep for me because, you know, I'm working like 67 hours a day. Now, Mike's offering the best deal on his Giza Dreams bed sheets ever. You can get a set of Giza sheets for as low as $29.98. You'll never want to sleep on anything else once you slept on a set of Giza Dream sheets. A special offer for you right now. You can get a set of Giza sheets for as low as $29.98. Call 1-800-928-4715. Use the promo code Wyatt. Or go to MyPillow.com, use the promo code Wyatt. It's good on anything on the website. That number again, 1-800-928-4715. Use my promo code Wyatt. Thanks for spending part of your Sunday with us here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Now, from 77 years ago, January 29th, 1946, The Creaking Door returns. Inner-Sanctum-Mysteries.
Lipton Tea and Lipton Soup present Inner-Sanctum-Mysteries. Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum. This is your host to welcome you through the creaking door. We're going to begin tonight's festivities on a scientific note with something that will save you a good deal of money. Yes, it seems that quite a few people have taken to turning off their refrigerators during this program. Yes, they've discovered they can deep freeze all sorts of things by just listening to Inner Sanctum and letting their blood run cold.
Well, Mr. Host, that's quite an idea. Have you any other scientific suggestions?
Oh, certainly, Mary. For instance, here's a way to cut down on your laundry bills. Instead of having the laundry starch your clothes, just put them on top of your radio Tuesday nights. Inner Sanctum will scare them stiff. Now, friends, lend an ear to tonight's story. An original radio play by Robert Newman called Blood of Cain, starring two of your radio favorites, Mercedes McCambridge and Carl Swenson. A tale of blood spilled in hatred and vengeance. Blood that carries a curse that is as old as man. You don't believe that's possible, eh? And suppose you put out all the lights, pull your chair up close, and listen. A small square, once fashionable, on the outskirts of New Orleans. The iron balconies where elegant ladies once sat are now rusty and sagging. The paint on the rambling houses is cracked and peeling, and grass grows between the cobblestones. The bayous and the jungle have crept close to it, and at night the cries of strange birds, the croaking of giant frogs can be heard. What was formerly a living portion of the old world has become a place of decay and death.
More pigeons died this evening. I saw them towering up and up into the darkening sky, as if to escape the pain gnawing at their vitals, and then fall into the square and into the garden. I still didn't believe, couldn't let myself believe. And then I saw her, standing in the shrubbery, the bag from which she had been feeding them still in her hand. I knew then that I could wait no longer, that I had to find out. Louise?
Eugene, the pigeons. There's something wrong with them. They're...
Dying. Yes.
How? And why?
I'm no chemist, but I'd say it was poison.
Poison? But who would do that?
Louise. Now listen to me, dear. Please listen. I love you. I've loved you since I first came down here. First met you. You know that. And you know that I'll understand. Now tell me, why have you been doing it? You're the only one who feeds them. The only one who could do it.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Louise, where are you?
Grandfather!
Oh, my dear child, what is it?
The pigeons. They're dying. It's the second day now. And Eugene said...
He said what?
Have you looked at any of them, Dr. Philippe? Examined them?
Will you go into the house, my dear? I'll be along in just a minute.
But, Grandfather...
Please, dear.
Yes, Grandfather. Of course.
I'm very sorry you did this, Owen. Mentioned it to her.
Did you examine any of the pigeons?
I did. Poison. Probably from my laboratory.
But then you know...
I know a great deal, Mr. Owen. I'm her grandfather. And I think it would be very wise if you kept away from Louise. Did not see her again.
What? Well, that's ridiculous. I love her.
I'm sure you do. But perhaps I did not make myself clear. If you continue to see her, it might prove dangerous for you.
I didn't eat any supper that night. I went back to my room and sat there in the dark, staring at the shuttered, brooding house. About 11 o'clock, the door of the doctor's house opened quietly, and Louise came out. Without looking right or left, moving almost like a sleepwalker. She went up the street. I hesitated only a minute, and then I hurried down the stairs and after her. And just as I got downstairs, the door opened again, and...
Is that you, Owen?
What? Yes, Doctor. She just left the house. I was watching from the window.
Yes, I know. She's done it several times, and this time I was determined to follow her and see where she goes.
Look, she's hailing a cab. My car's right across the street. Quick. Louise went in there. What kind of a place is that?
Oh, dear, that smell. There's the smell of death. From the noise, I would say it was an abattoir.
A slaughterhouse? Good Lord. But why? Why would she come down here in the dead of night?
I like you, Owen. I think you know that. And it was for your own sake that I warned you to keep away from her. There are things that you do not... well, that you cannot know about her.
No? Well, we'll see. I'm going in and get her and find out from her what...
Just a moment. There she is. Just inside the gate, talking to the watchman.
No sense arguing about it, lady. I just can't let you in.
But you must. You've got to. You always did before.
That's just it. Now, once was all right, even twice. But, well, if you want to know the truth, the men have been complaining. Nobody exactly likes killing steers, but they say that the way you stand there watching them, well, it makes them nervous.
You've got to let me in. I'll make it worth your while.
Watching the killing?
I've just got orders from the...
That's awful. It's horrible. I'm going in and get her.
No. In the state she's in, well, having you come on her suddenly would have a very bad effect. But you wait here. I'll go.
No, don't hit me, no!
Louise! What is it? Here. What happened? The watchman. This stone here on the temple.
Louise!
Why did you do this?
I don't know. I had to get in here. He wouldn't let me in.
Take her out to the car, Owen. Come on, let's go.
You can't go now. Leave him lying there like that. He's hurt. He may be dying.
No, it's not serious. He's just stunned. We can phone for an ambulance as soon as we get home. But we've got to get her away from here immediately. Sit down, Louise.
Yes, Grandfather. I'm sorry I ran away like that, Eugene. But I suddenly felt strange. Ill.
That's all right, Louise.
You've been feeling that way quite often lately, haven't you?
Yes. Yes, I have.
Just what makes this feeling so strange?
Well, it's hard to describe. It's as if I weren't myself anymore. It's the opposite of sleepwalking. It's as if I were awake, but not really conscious. And I hear voices telling me to do things, and whispering a name that sounds like Jonah.
Like what? You've been in my study reading my books.
No, but I haven't, Grandfather. You always forbade me to.
And how did you know that name?
Well, whose name is it? And, well, what does it have to do with Louise?
It's the name of a family which is almost extinct. And it is a name which means death.
Well, what do you mean?
I was always very interested in the Jonat family for reasons of my own. And I've collected all the historical references to them that I could. These references start with the 13th and 14th century. But by the 15th century, they had become the traditional executioners of France.
Executioners?
And in those days, you know what that meant. It was a Jonat who put the torch to Jeanne d'Arc. A Jonat received a handsome bequest from Louis XI for services rendered. A Jonat operated the guillotine during the French Revolution. Perhaps that's why the family migrated here after the fall of the Republic.
They came here?
Yes. 20-odd years ago, there were a whole series of particularly atrocious murders here. The murderer was finally caught and executed. His name was Max Jonat.
Why do you tell me all this? And why should I constantly seem to hear that name?
Well, even when you were little, my dear, you used to have those strange fits, spells when you would do unpleasant things. Afterward, you could never remember them.
Oh.
Now, do you remember poisoning the pigeons and going to the slaughterhouse?
What? Oh, no,
Well,
no.
I've never discussed the matter with you because I thought it might actually implant the idea in your mind. I'd hoped that if you were left alone, you'd outgrow it, but...
But what? You still haven't told me what all this about the Jonas has to do with me.
It has a great deal to do with you, my dear. You see, Max Jonat was your father.
Well, now there's a girl with a real tradition in her family. A murderer for a father and a long line of ancestors who were real killer-dillers. I was beginning to get a little worried about her. Fooling around, poisoning pigeons and things like that. But I can see now that there was method in her madness. After all, practice makes perfect.
And while the host and Mary Bennett go up to sell some Lipton tea, we're going to take our bottom of the hour break for your favorite station. We're going back 77 years, January 29th, 1946. Inner Sanctum Mysteries here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. By the way, I have to tell you that if you heard some errors in the last couple of days' shows and some noise issues, it is because we had to operate out of a different studio. It was a little more noisy, and I apologize for that. Anyway, Mercedes McCambridge and Inner Sanctum Mysteries will be up following the news from 77 years ago and these messages from your favorite radio station. Thanks for tuning in on this Sunday edition of Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. We're listening to an episode of Inner Sanctum Mysteries, starring Mercedes McCambridge. The episode is entitled The Blood of Cain, as it was originally broadcast on Tuesday, January 29th, 1946. In the newspapers of that Tuesday 77 years ago, these were some of the headlines. New federal action within the next few days towards settlement of the week-old steel strike was strongly hinted at last night, but its nature was not revealed. Officials still were unanimous, however, in discounting any idea that early seizure of the industry was in the cards. The most commonly discussed possibility was new conferences with steel management leaders, though highly placed persons said the White House had nothing of that sort actually on foot. One high official who could not be quoted indicated that the White House would move on the dispute again around the middle of the week unless it were on the way to settlement by that time. John D. Small, chief of the Civilian Production Administration, was asked at a news conference whether the government would seize the steel mills if the strike continued for a long time. He said, "I hope it doesn't come to that." Meanwhile, meat supplies were increasing slowly throughout the country, with striking CIO and AFL meat workers back on the job under federal operation of packing plants. Gail Armstrong, the government director of the seized plants, said livestock receipts were substantial and packing houses' operations were proceeding smoothly. He predicted meat would be moving in normal volume soon. Secretary of War Patterson said yesterday he believes it will be possible to speed up the withdrawal of U.S. troops from the India, Burma, and Middle East theaters and discharge all men now there prior to the previously set June 30th deadline. Patterson, just back from a globe-girding inspection trip of Army installations, told a news conference that only a few hundred men will be retained for air transport operations in the India, Burma, and Middle East theaters. Former Supreme Court Justice Owen J. Roberts asked the Pearl Harbor inquiry yesterday to make the original report of his investigation of the disaster a part of its record to allay suspicions that it may have been tampered with or partially suppressed. In belligerent mood, the man who stepped down temporarily from the high bench at the late President Roosevelt's behest to make the first inquiry into the sneak Jap attack staunchly defended his report of his commission. He charged two Republican members of the current inquiry with investigating the Roberts Commission rather than the disaster, and he invited one of these to draw your own conclusion. But he insisted that there was no elimination in the final report from its earlier drafts. Children were burned alive in a blazing furnace and newborn babies drowned in buckets by their Nazi jailers at the Osias concentration camp. A female woman survivor testified yesterday at the war trial of Nazi leaders in Nuremberg. The witness was Madame Marie-Claude Vaillant-Courtier, communist member of the French Assembly and former inmate of both the Osias and Ravensbrück camps. Some of the defendants appeared to wince at the testimony of how the pretty blonde witness, who described in lurid detail how the Nazis turned the women's camps into an experimental sterilization center and slave mart. Those some of the day's top news stories as reported in the newspapers of Tuesday, January 29th, 1946, on your radio, Inner Sanctum Mysteries, the conclusion of which you'll hear next on this Sunday Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite radio station. We'll start off our week with Monday's Classic Radio Theater, Harold Perry, in an episode of The Great Gildersleeve going back 79 years to January 30th, 1944. Marjorie the Actress. Marjorie's gone theatrical, and a war hero visiting Summerfield isn't helping matters. That's coming up on Monday's Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Now the conclusion of Inner Sanctum Mysteries, The Blood of Cain, starring Mercedes McCambridge, January 29th, 1946.
And now, are we ready to get down to business again? The kind of business that Louise's family has specialized in for a good many years. Murder. Oh, I know that what she's been interested in so far is small fry, but I think from now on she'll really be cooking with gas. Just a moment later now. Sitting in Dr. Philippe's study, Louise and Eugene Owen stare at the elderly gentleman with shock and horror in their eyes.
You mean my father was a murderer?
Your father, and his father before him, back as far as the family's history can be traced.
Well, I don't believe it. And even if it is true, it's ridiculous to think this need to kill can be passed on from generation to generation.
Well, of course, Owen, there is absolutely no scientific basis for it. Still, how else can you explain some of the things that Louise has been doing?
Oh, it's true, it's true. These spells that come over me when I don't know what I'm doing. That name which I never heard consciously until... Oh, no, it can't be true. It can't.
Oh, Louise, dear.
No, Eugene, don't. Don't come near me. Don't touch me. If there's even a chance that it's so...
Well, I didn't want to tell you. I was never very close to your father because he was a rather strange son-in-law. But if you want to know more about him, there is someone you should talk to. Joel Ferguson, down on Gaylord Street. He was the very last person to see your father alive.
Yes, who is it?
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes. Who is it?
My name is Louise Philippe. I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes.
Just a second. Come in. In here.
Thank you.
What did you say your name was again?
Louise Philippe. At least that's what I always believed it was. Until yesterday. And then I discovered that my name was Louise Jonas.
Jonas? Not Max Jonas?
Yes. He was my father.
What do you want of me after all these years? It wasn't my fault. You know it wasn't my fault. I only did what I had to do.
I don't know what you mean. I was told that you were the last person to see him alive. And that perhaps you could tell me something about him.
Yes. There are things that I can tell you. That he was evil, but that he knew he was evil. There was a curse on him that made him do the things he did do. Voices that whispered in his ear, told him to kill, made him kill.
Voices?
And in the end, at the last minute, he thanked me.
He thanked you for what?
For stopping him from doing any more killing in the only way he could be stopped. And when I put the rope around his neck...
The rope?
I was the state executioner. It was I who hanged him.
You killed my father.
I only carried out the sentence that was passed on him, and And why are you looking at me that way?
I didn't know. I only came here to see you because...
You're lying. If you were his daughter, then you were like him. And you came down here to kill me.
Kill you?
That knife there in your bag.
Huh? I didn't even know it was there.
You're lying. Keep away from me. Keep away.
But I didn't come down here to kill you.
Then stop staring at me like that. Put that knife away. No, don't come near me. Don't.
Good evening, Mr. Owen. Where's Miss Louise Benson? I must see her right away.
I'm sorry, sir, but she's not in. She went out about a half hour ago.
Oh, well, where did she go?
I'm afraid I don't know, sir. She didn't say.
Well, what about Dr. Philippe?
He's not in either, sir. He left right after Miss Louise as soon as he heard that she'd gone out.
Oh?
It seemed to me, sir, he looked rather worried. He said something about Mr. Ferguson.
Ferguson? Great Scott! If she went down... Thank you.
Who's that?
I'm looking for Miss Louise Philippe. I was told that she... Is that you, Dr. Philippe?
Yes, Eugene.
Is she here?
Yes, she's here. But you're too late, just as I was too late.
What do you mean?
Inside there. See for yourself.
Oh, don't tell me that anything's happened. Good Lord.
Louise. She won't answer you. That's the way I found her when I got here. Sitting there with a knife in her hand and Ferguson lying across the table, dead.
Eugene.
Louise.
Eugene.
Oh, Louise,
Eugene.
darling. Oh, why did you do it?
Do what? Ferguson. Dead?
Yes, dear. Didn't you do it?
I don't know. I didn't even know who he was when I came down here. And I found out that it was he who executed my father. Then I started to hear those voices. Voices telling me to kill, that I had to kill. Then there was a knife in my hand. Oh, I can't remember.
Voices. That's what Max said at the trial. It was the only defense he offered, but that he heard voices telling him to kill. It didn't save him. But in your case, the woman...
What are you saying?
Well, there's no sense even trying to escape. That would only make things worse, you know that?
Yes, Grandfather. Except that there is only one way that things could be made worse. That is if I were allowed to live.
But Louise, don't say that. You must...
Oh, it's true, Eugene. For centuries, to be a Jonard meant to bear the mark of Cain. Well, I'm the last of the Jonards, and there must never be another.
Well, I had not gone quite that far, my dear, but perhaps you're right.
I am right. Goodbye, Grandfather. Eugene.
Louise, come back. Wait.
No, let her go, Eugene. She's my own flesh and blood. But I think that may be the best way after all.
Yes? Well, we'll see. Louise! Wait, please!
It's no use, Eugene. It's all very clear.
Clear as witch's brew.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Maybe it's because of our love that I understand. Maybe that was what was wrong with the Jonards. They never knew love, only hatred. But there is a cure. It lies there, in the river.
Louise.
No, please, dear. There's a curse on me. On all the Jonards that ever were.
You're right. There is a curse, but not the kind that you think, dear. Listen, I was at the library all afternoon reading, and I think I understand now, for the first time.
You understand what?
The nature of the curse, and how it can be ended. Because it can be ended in only one way.
Oh, Eugene? Is that you? Eugene?
No, Grandfather. It's not Eugene.
Louise, why, I thought you... Why did you come back here to Ferguson's place?
I don't know, Grandfather. The voices. The call in my blood, it's too strong. I tried. I wanted to end it finally and completely, either in the river or with the police. But I couldn't.
You mean you're not going to give yourself up?
No, Grandfather. I'm not going to give myself up. But that's not all I mean.
Louise, you still got that knife?
Yes, Grandfather. Walking up the street, realizing that I was still holding it, that it was red with blood. I think it was then that I knew for the first time what it meant to be a journal.
Look, Louise, you're completely distraught. That's only natural. But now, look, you put that knife down and let me take you home. I'll give you something that'll help you sleep, and then
No,
tomorrow...
Grandfather, you won't give me anything. Ever again.
Well, Louise, you're not going to kill me.
Yes, Grandfather, that's just what I'm going to do.
No, Louise,
No, don't try to get away. I'm younger and quicker than you. Just one quick...
No, listen to me. Listen carefully. You can't kill me. There's nothing driving you to do it. You see, you're not a Jonat.
What are you saying?
It's true. I am a Jonat. Max Jonat was my son. But you're not evenly, distantly related to us.
You're lying. You're lying. You're just saying that.
No. I swear it's true. I changed my name when I studied medicine to avoid the stigma. But Max kept it. Your father was Louis Martin, the judge.
You're lying. How is that possible?
Well, because I adopted you after your father's death, for a reason. It was your father who condemned Max to death. He didn't know Max was my son, and I didn't tell him until later. Your mother died when you were born, and I was your father's physician. And when he was desperately ill, I offered to adopt you and take care of you. And then when the papers were signed, I told him who I was, what I was going to do, that I was going to destroy you to avenge my son. And that's what killed him.
But all those horrible things I've been doing, poisoning the pigeons, killing Ferguson...
You haven't been doing them. It was I who did them, using drugs and suggestion to make you believe that it was you, so that you would either destroy yourself or...
Oh, thank heaven, Eugene! Eugene, did you hear?
Yes, dearest, I heard. And I told you, didn't I?
Eugene! So it was a trick to trap me.
Yes, Doctor, it was. I was at the library and at City Hall all day looking up the records. Here, drop that knife.
No, Owen. This won't be as poetic a death as the one I'd planned for her, but...
The lights! Louise, put the lights out!
Oh, that won't help you. Either of you. You won't get away. I'll find you in the light or in the darkness. And... there you are. Die, then. Now you'll die. Die!
Louise!
It's not I.
It's not you. What did... Then who did... Let go of me! Let go of me!
Lights! Louise, quickly.
Eugene, what happened? Who did he... Ferguson.
Yes. He stumbled into him in the darkness, thought it was one of us. Then he must have tripped.
The knife. He must have fallen on the knife.
Well, somehow it seems only right that the last of the Journals, who killed so many, should be destroyed by the dead.
Oh. Too bad, Doc. You were a character we certainly could use on this program. But now at least you've got the perfect answer for the rest of your family when you meet them in wherever it is that dead murderers congregate. When they ask you who you were with last night, you can always say, "That was no lady, that was my knife."
Well, I'm glad you could put a new point on that old joke, Mr. Host.
Oh, I like to sharpen up an old saw now and then, Mary. May I add a word of advice, friends? If you should happen to bump into an elderly gentleman dressed all in black on a dark street some night, don't get into an argument with him, especially if he happens to be carrying a blood-stained knife. After all, you can end up just as stiff if you're dead right as if you're dead wrong. Oh, by the way, this month's Inner Sanctum Mystery novel is The Pavilion by Hilda Lawrence. And next week's Inner Sanctum story, brought to you by the makers of Lipton Tea and Lipton Soup, and directed by Hyman Brown. Next week's story is called Skeleton Bay. It's about a lady novelist who writes murder mysteries until she decides she'd rather be a character instead of an author. She chooses Skeleton Bay as a vacation spot, but it turns out to be her last resort. Now join us next Tuesday on Skeleton Bay. Until then, friends, good night. Pleasant dreams.
And there you have it. January 29th, 1946, 77 years ago, Inner Sanctum Mysteries, here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Mercedes McCambridge did a lot of horror work in the 40s with Inner Sanctum, and then she would do other work and do some movie work in the 50s as well. But anyway, a delightful actress, even if she was a murderer, you know. Thanks for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Hope you will go visit mypillow.com. Click on the radio listener special. Use my promo code Wyatt to save a whole bunch of money on getting you something to give you a better night's sleep. I sleep on my pillow each and every night, and you will find you will have a better night's sleep. That's mypillow.com. Promo code Wyatt, W-Y-A-T-T. Okay, and visit my webpage also, classicradio.stream. Stream our shows on demand. Learn about building a classic radio collection of your own. You can contact me there, find our social media links, and you can also buy me a coffee. That helps us acquire additional classic radio collections to bring to you, and also helps us keep our distribution channels up and running. That is at classicradio.stream. Have yourself a great day. Tell all your friends the great radio shows are right here at this spot on the radio dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite radio station.